Wow. Happy
Good,
Thursday.
good morning.
Oh,
Before we get started, I have to just say one thing. I love watching you guys when the intro is playing, and someday we're going to have to have a bloopers reel with the three of us dancing at different times. It's amazing. Megan, that was amazing.
thank you. I'm a really great dancer. Thank you. That's why I do it when I know almost no one can see me. Matt, I love your hat. Very, very appropriate matching of the graphics behind us right now. It looks great.
If you look down a little bit, you'll see a little bit of the same. Mr. Dowderman's got I think he's layering. I think he's layering Valiant today. It's not concentric. He's got concentric circles of cotton going on today.
I could put on my jacket. Should I do it?
Okay, all good.
Here, I'll just show this where I take notes.
My notebook. I've read the notebooks. Love
them. But guys, it's so great to see you guys again Thursday morning. This is our last stream of the year. If I think you mentioned that, Matt, and I'm really excited. So what we're doing today is we are revisiting trends that we forecasted or talked about earlier this year, and just kind of talking about what happened to those trends, where we're at now with those trends, which I love as a topic. And it's, I think, a really fun way to like do a little look back on the year.
It is. We did an episode where we had a handful of people from around the industry, a couple of MSP owners, some vendors, and other folks that we deal with on a regular basis join us to talk about Gartner's 2022. Yeah, 2022. I have a horrible tendency of saying 2002. I hopefully a few weeks I'll stop that. But 2022 technology, strategic technology trends. And we looked at 6 of them. And, then we almost a little more than a year ago, because I think it was December 3rd we did that. It's been a year, and now it's time to kind of look at that and see what has happened, what hasn't happened, and what we're going to be looking forward towards in 2023.
Now, if I remember correctly, it was a lot of like meshes and fabrics, right? As a metaphor.
Yeah, it felt more like we may have been knitting something than talking about technology.
We're discussing textile trends or something. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Textiles. That was good.
Thank you.
That was good. Textiles. Wow. But yeah, speaking of textiles, let's just jump right in. I think one of the first things that we did talk about was data fabric. And,
great
segue. The definition of a data fabric is something that I think we're going to let, who is it? I believe Colin Knox from Gradient MSP talk about. I believe I have a clip from him, and then we'll take a couple minutes to talk about exactly what it was that happened. So let's see what he's got to say.
We're attaching a lot of things together and pulling data in from a bunch of different systems so that we can piece it all together and find out and dig in to find out what is real, and then have that single source of truth that can provide intelligence on a whole bunch of different levels across things.
No, I mean, that's the kind of the thing that like, it makes me laugh, because when we talk about like data fabric, data convergence, synergy, cohesion, unification, like this is not new. Having all our disparate systems bring all the data together so we can see it under one house, under one single pane of glass. How many times have we heard vendors say single pane of glass, pane of glass? It's just data fabric is the 2022 buzzword, right?
But it doesn't include the word synergy, which you said in the land of buzzwords, right? But the other piece is like a single strand of anything. I did knit Matt's hat, right? A single strand of yarn I can break apart, but now that I've turned it into fabric, you can't break that apart, right? So like, that's the power of it being fabric and woven together. Is it's so much stronger, which is the definition of synergy. But I just have PTSD from overuse of that word.
So there we go. That's a little bit about data fabrics. And I got to tell you, we looked so young back then. Just kids, kids trying to understand data fabric. And I think that at the end of, not the end of, but after over this year and thinking about that term, the one term that really matters when we're talking about something like a data fabric is interoperability.
Right.
That's really what matters. That's how the systems are able to talk to each other, to have these single panes of glass and these data fabrics. And without that foundational capability, none of this is possible. And, it's something that, data fabric, we called it a buzzword because it is, but it's a real thing. When you think about it, something like Office 365 or Google, is it Google Workspace at this point? I can never.
It's Workspace.
Workspace? Okay. It's changed a bit over the years.
I've been using Workspace quite a bit. It'd be apps and then Google.
I was just going to say the Google apps and stuff. But, those are platforms. But when you think about it, in a way, they're data fabrics because they're bringing data from so many different, most likely siloed locations within their platform and putting it in one place for you. As much as I dislike hearing a term like single pane of glass, when you do go into the main Office 365 screen, you pretty much see everything that you need to see. And that's beautiful.
That's true.
It's, you know, as always, it's how well it's implemented, right? Like if you if it's like just a raw stock out of the box, probably not going to do what you want it to do. So there's a bit of, you know, these tools are just that. They're tools and they're platforms, and they're able to be built into something useful. I mean, that's really the real trick. It's like, okay, yeah, great. Here's all this different. You can read it.
Well, if you think about it as a home, the platform is the foundation of a home, and you have to build on top of that to make it yours.
Right.
And that's I think part of what's missing from concepts like this at the moment. We can talk data fabric. We talk about where the information comes from. Now that the information's in front of us, how do we arrange it in ways that are the most helpful for us? How do we use them in ways to make the right decisions to help grow our businesses? And I think that now that the idea, and again, it's a trend, so I don't like using idea. It's something that already existed. We have platforms like this, and there are these kind of data fabrics, at least for user data, that we're talking about today. The next step is going to have to be how to make it easier. The next step is going to be how to make very intelligent decisions with this wealth of information that's now in front of you. And I'm looking forward to that. I think we're going to see quite a bit of that coming to us in 2023.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So we are going to go from fabrics to meshes. Now, if you're into, say, the medieval times, a mesh is a fabric, right? Because you'd wear that when you're jousting. So there's a little bit of redundancy in this, but we're talking cybersecurity and no longer talking about data. I believe we had, let me think about this, either Dan Comis or Drew from Polaris IT give us some insight onto that. So let's watch that real quick. If I can click the button.
I think cybersecurity mesh is just kind of the evolution of what we've already been talking about previously, which was security in layers.
Right.
With the exception of now those layers are talking to each other. They're more interwoven.
They're more flexible.
You're not just getting an alert from Huntress, from Sophos, from whatever insert blank vendor here that's monitoring those things. They're actually interacting with each other. They have some way to do something else together, to fix that. And this is probably of the buzzwords and everything I saw. This was probably only one of the ones that really kind of jumped out at me as a I like the idea of it, the concept of it. I was like, I'm gonna steal this one.
So even the medieval mention of the type of what is it that they would wear in battle or jousting? There's like that mesh that would go on.
Oh, chainmail.
Thank you, chainmail comes to mind, because when you think about that, that's something that is flexible, it moves with your body, and it offers protection. I think that's a lot of what was being talked about with regards to the cybersecurity mesh as well.
Yeah, I think the idea is, you take all these different disparate pieces, you kind of weave into, and once again, single pane of glass.
Interoperability between these systems.
Right. Not always true. And there's a lot of operational, once again, this goes back to like, there's a lot of operational workflows that have to get defined. We see it. I know how many things we log into, have to review at any given time for any of our clients. And we're not a giant multinational corporation. We do support a lot of stuff though. So I suppose that we're not indicative of many small businesses. But that being said, it's really, this is another term I think that gets a lot of buzzy words to it, and you have to be really careful. And I think one of the things that's really key is when you're picking tooling, which I think is a great word to use for this, is they're just that, they're tooling. They're not the people doing the heavy lifting. So you have to think like, what are each piece of this mesh going to impact the people doing the work, or how to use these mesh in a way that's productive.
Essentially really take action on what it's able to do. I think one of the issues that many businesses have, and when I say many businesses, I mean even businesses within our industry, is that we have this wealth of information, especially with things like security logs and understanding what's going on in the network, but it is a tidal wave of information. And you do need to be able to have these different sources come together in a way that helps you tell a story that explains exactly what is or isn't going on in the network. And, we're seeing a lot of really interesting developments in the SMB space here. I think we're seeing some things come down from enterprise. I'm excited to see the expansion of both SOC and SIEM over the coming years. I think that we've seen some really great benefits from working with companies that are able to handle monitoring with that respect, and it's made a significant difference. I know for us, which obviously gets to our customers, and it's made a big difference for a lot of other businesses. And that's one area that I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's really interesting.
Now, George, why don't you take care of this third one? You go for that one.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Privacy enhancing computation. Okay.
I can't say the term.
Enhancing computation.
So you let George
this goes into like a okay. Like, what exactly does that mean? And I guess where I've kind of seen maybe this get a little more fleshed out in the past year is and I hate this, Eric, it's really buzzy, is, you start getting into like blockchain and encryption and things that people like, other buzzwords or other buzzy
almost like the technical mystical arts in a way.
There might be some dark arts in there, a little Harry Potter reference.
A little bit.
So I think what it is that, it really does get like, what exactly does that mean? Isn't privacy something that should be baked into? But I think that if you look at even the recent, just look at the changes that Apple's privacy stance has changed. Even our own ability to work with customers has changed. On a fundamental level. A really simple thing is every Mac has to have the person on the other end of it approve the viewing of a sharing of a screen themselves, not administratively. So I think that's it's not computation, but that's just kind of like a direction towards the privacy side. I think
it is. It requires two individuals for an action to take place, and I think I would consider that to be a form of due diligence. We have a clip from last year, so let's see what one of our guests had to say.
I mean, it just comes down to the current status of, and maybe it's the New York cynic in me. Ultimately, people don't care enough to put in the work or to pay to keep it private, right? True. If Instagram was $5 a month, what do you think would happen to their user base?
Yeah,
Twitter just put out something, right? It's like $3 a month for some other status. I can't wait to hear how successful that is for them.
Well, yeah, I mean, take it to another level. And speaking of not willing to pay for this, ransomware. So a big shift in ransomware with more people having backup. Criminals, and this isn't entirely new either, speaking of trends that aren't exactly new, but switching to data exfiltration. And so there's all these leak sites. All the major ransomware operators have leak sites now where they'll start posting things. And yeah, sure, there'll be like a news article if it's a big company that's hit, and there'll be some data that gets out there. But there's stats that show payments have not gone up because of this. Like, this isn't a convincing tactic, because in the end, we're just so as the consumer, the customers of these giant companies, we see data breaches all the time. And we're kind of like desensitized to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. And these corporations look at it and they're like, yeah, we get bad PR for a day or two, and then it kind of goes away. And so we're not going to pay that. So
one thing I found really interesting about what was being said there is, Dan Comas pretty much said people tend not to care about privacy in certain ways. And I think that's incredibly true. And that's something that needs to change. I was at a restaurant not too long ago where they offered to give you a free order of fries if you gave them your email address for their newsletter. And of course, that's marketing. That's not something that's necessarily going to be harmful. But I think that what I'm getting at is that people don't value their privacy quite enough. If you can equate your privacy to an 89-cent plate of fries, that's a problem. And that's not a problem that's solved through technology. That's a problem that's solved through people valuing their privacy. And understanding the risks that occur when that privacy is breached in one way or another.
What's the that phrase is if it's free, like you're the product, right? Like, I think people, it's almost like we don't value our own information, or we do, but we're desensitized to it because all these
social media.
Yeah,
we put all their information out already.
We are literally, the currency is us, right? And I think it's like, okay, how do we reverse that so people actually realize the value of their privacy then?
And now that we're saying this and we're giving an example of people I'm sorry, we just need to take a moment. Mr. Charles Dean, it's so good to hear from you. And now that everyone has none of your fries, you get out of here.
That's great.
But I think what we're doing is we're demonstrating that personal privacy is something that isn't necessarily cared about that much. I mean, think there was a marketing agency or marketing department someplace that said, hey, you know what? I bet you we can get a bunch of email addresses in return for fries. And you have to wonder if anyone that was in that meeting said, well, I wouldn't do that for myself. I would never give my information away like that. But it's cool. Other people will. And that's why it happens that way. And I think that as consumers and as individuals working in any kind of role, we do need to remember how important our privacy is, then how important the privacy is of other people, and we do what we need to do to protect it. Yeah. So this is not something that's a buzzword. This is something that is critical, and I personally hope that someday we see legitimate requirements in the workplace that cannot be skirted around for something like this.
Yeah, seriously, it's pretty sad, because I think some people just don't get that.
I'm sorry if I got a little quiet and monotonal on that one, but I've had major privacy issues over the years because I share a name with a famous author and a famous actor. And you know, sometimes I've had a couple of interesting situations with like credit card companies and things. So that's very important to me. The next one is interesting. Distributed enterprises. Now, when I hear the term distributed when it comes to technology, the first thing that comes to mind for me would be distributed networks, BitTorrent, ways to increase redundancy of how information is being shared and located. But that's not what this is about. This is really more about the distribution of the physical locations over a significant area. A wide geographic area could be a metropolitan area, a country, the world. And I always found this to be interesting because I've never known a time when there weren't decentralized systems in one form or another. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, it's a strange one to be like a topic of review, right? It's like, and it sort of it was almost, I equate it to almost like edge computing in the same vein, where it's like, wait, so we're just gonna put the computer closer to the person. You mean like in their network, in their, you know, like what does that mean? And I think this needs a little bit more
meat.
Yeah, again, a little more like definition here, because by distributed, it's like, of course, but the interesting part about that is actually going full circle back to the kind of revolution of the early 90s when everything went away from mainframes and mini computers,
the PC,
and you know, and open source, open architecture infrastructure. And now, you know, and then it went to cloud, which is inherently kind of closed, and now it's going back. So it's once again, there's nothing new under the sun.
But that's if you look back at any period of time, you could always see a back and forth and ideas and actions that are taken. So all you need to do is step back, and we're going to see this in a very different way. And I'm only cutting you off because I want to apologize to you in the audience, because distributed enterprise was so much sizzle and no steak that I was going to skip it today.
Right. Yeah.
Let's talk cloud native platforms. That's something that's so much more important to us.
I was going to bring us back around on that one.
Thank you. Please have at it.
So, you know, this is so almost not anything. But I think what is interesting about this is that so many tools we started using in the past, let's say 5 years, are becoming truly things that were, and another term I just want to gag is born in the cloud, but they utilize, you know, the ubiquitous connectivity, mobile devices, high speed, you know, that, and a great example of it is, and you put it here, Matt, is does anyone even use Visio anymore? And I know we don't. Like, we use Lucidchart, which is a cloud native app. I mean, how many people utilize Smartsheet over Excel, or even if you want to go even more, a little deeper into it, like Google Sheets versus Excel. Now,
right.
Excel is a super powerful tool. Excel has become way more.
Or a cloud-based streaming platform, or like we're using right now, where you guys don't even have software on your computers. You opened up a web browser.
Correct. And look how it's changed over the past year, almost 2 years we've been using it, where now it's a really fully functional recording platform, and you can do a lot. So I think, you know, it's interesting though, and Charles has a good point here about mix of AWS and different clouds and multi-cloud. And I think it's true. It's like what's things are going to be in this like kind of hybrid world, because one does not fit everything. And You know, enterprises went really hard into AWS and Azure and IBM and Google. Now they're pulling back a bit because the price performance and security get a little more murky. And so it's going to be a bit of a turbulent ride, I think.
I think it's not a trend. It's simply an evolution. It's something that's kind of snuck up on us over the years, and I think it's a good thing. And I'm excited to see where it goes. And I believe Dan Comis from TechRunner had something to say that last year. So let's see what he's got.
As we've spoken with new prospects, almost actually 100% of them this year, the conversation is, oh, we have this thing. We just want to go cloud, though. We don't want this anymore. And it's just the greatest door that opens because we want to do the same thing. Right. You know, it's a great starting point, you know, on the buzzword digital transformation journey for that client at that time. So yeah, heavily underway. And once these small businesses are getting to a point where they're ready to accept some sort of major change, be it they're moving or they're reorganizing the company or the acquisition, whatever it is, that tends to fall right in line. Like, okay, let's do it. Let's get rid of this stuff and let's just live
full steam ahead. Yeah.
You know, breaking news in 2022, people are going to want to work from anywhere. Wow. Who knew? You know, and it makes me laugh because like, I remember when like HP 17, whatever, Packard Bell, when HP was doing this back in, or Texas Instruments, when HP was doing this, you know, early 2010s, where they had work from home people, and Marissa Meyer comes in and she says, no, and brings everybody back to the office and the revolt. And then hearing the stuff now where people want to be distributed, but you know, and now the people that are being forced back into the office are saying, I'm going to leave, I'm going to go elsewhere. I'm like, we did this, right? We've been there, done that. Yeah. But being able to plan, and that's where I think MSPs are kind of like the unsung heroes of the 2020, 2021, 2022 new norm, right? Where, you know, this whole thing of we've been touting you can work from anywhere, and MSPs turned it into we did work from anywhere, which I think is phenomenal. And I'll, you know, take my hat off to all the MSPs that made that happen.
So, all right, I'm going to sum that up. You want to be able to work from anywhere? We make that happen. We're going to move on to the last item for today, total experience. I don't think there's another thing that needs to be said about cloud native. You know, total experience was a buzzword, but it makes perfect sense. It's more than just creating a good customer experience. It's about creating an amazing customer experience from multiple angles. And to me, that's important. I think it's important to everyone. And it's something that needs to continue. I think a lot of businesses have really embrace this idea. I have to say, I think that we have. I've seen some really great conversations. I know we've done some amazing things with our customers over the past year. And to close out the stream, I'm just going to show a quick clip from Marnie Stockman over at Lifecycle Insights. She's like the authority when it comes to customer experience. So let's give that a listen.
So I do have tons of opinions, as you well know. I wrote a whole book on it to talk about it, right? So I think when I think of total experience, everybody kind of needs to approach their businesses with the end goal in mind. So there's two different things, and I don't like to term just customer experience, because customer experience really claims like how the interaction feels. I think about customer success as the broader term. So maybe that's what total experience means. But when I talk about customer success, I mean it is two things: customer experience, what it feels like to work with you, plus a focus on the customer outcomes. And that's where you mentioned earlier this phrase, it's like the weather. Everybody's talking about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. So I think for a few, you've been hearing now in this space, like, what's the customer experience? You see on websites, there's no nerd speak. We don't speak geek, right? We talk human to our clients. We have a portal. You can jump in and do everything here. So that's one part of it. That's what the experience of the work looks like. But you have to address their outcomes. And for managed service providers, you must have that strategic view and conversation with your partner to be that, everyone hates the other buzzword, strategic advisor or trusted advisor, but to be that, George is like, yes, I do hate that phrase. But if you want to have that conversation, you have to talk business about their business. Yeah. And service providers support those small businesses through technology, and that's the total experience in my mind.
That was great to see a little bit of a laugh there, and everything that Marnie had to say really summed up that entire segment. I honestly don't have a whole lot of input. She's the authority when it comes to this.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much of it is, it's in the year has proven to be a kind of like end of last year compared to now, it is a different. The world's turned around, obviously.
Yeah.
The turn of the screw, if you want to call it that. And there has been a lot of things that have changed. There's been a lot more. Obviously, there's a lot of talk of economic downturn and recession, and work-life imbalance and quiet quitting and all this sort of thing. And I think at the end of the day, it's the idea of total experience is the experience of both the customer, the staff, the leadership, all kind of coming together into something that's mutually beneficial and developing to a positive outcome for most people.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, because how many of you have had a bad experience working with when you go to buy something or go to use a service and it's not enjoyable because the person's miserable?
Well, I think that you said two things. One, outcomes. I mean, that's a big word for us to use. And person. I think a lot of this is about being a little bit more human.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, Matt, about the human part. I mean, as much as this is a quote unquote technology business, the reality is this is pretty much a human business that happens to work in the technology side of humans. Yeah. And that's a really important thing to keep in mind every day. And when we work with staff and new customers, and it's really important that they get that full experience. So,
all right. Well, hey, as much as I'd love to continue the conversation, I know that we all have meetings that we need to get to today, and I wanted to give us a chance to properly say goodbye to everyone for the remainder of the year.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah, George, is there anything you wanna close on?
Yeah, exactly. As I say, these are always fun, these predictions, kind of looking backwards, and so many things are just retreads and concepts, but just think about how all this stuff. Let's just go back to how it all impacts us day to day, how it all improves how it can improve or distract from our day-to-day lives. And when you start really kind of looking at it, like, do I really care about data mesh? Not really. But do I care about how data mesh can improve my life?
Boom.
That's the real trick.
That's it. It's outcomes. Outcomes is all there is to it. And we only have a couple minutes. Megan, anything you'd like to say?
No, it was really fun to see sort of that full panel we had last year and all this, I don't know, just wonderful group of people and their thoughts on all this stuff. And I really enjoyed re-listening to those thoughts, synthesizing it, our takes on it a year out. Yeah.
No, it was fantastic. And I'm going to help us end this with one last prediction. I predict that George is going to say our first planned episode of 2023 is related to collaboration.
Weird. Are you a
you are. You're like the great, whatever that
Sultan.
Exactly. You're great. We're talking about collaboration and how it can just kicking the year off right to get started working together.
That's it. So with that said, today is the last time you're going to see these three faces together until January. So I hope everyone has a great holiday and is looking forward to a fantastic new year.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, folks. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.